In a quiet little town surrounded by dense forests and rolling hills, there was a woman who commanded respect without ever having to raise her voice. Her name was Sergeant Emily Carter, a seasoned K-9 handler with years of experience under her belt. She wasn't just good at her job, she was exceptional. People often said that watching her work with her dogs was like witnessing poetry in motion. Every step she took exuded confidence, and every gesture carried purpose. Emily's loyal companions were Titan and Luna, two Belgian Malinois known for their unmatched speed, intelligence, and strength. These weren't ordinary dogs. They were highly trained military animals capable of performing tasks most humans couldn't dream of mastering. From detecting explosives to apprehending suspects, Titan and Luna had done it all alongside Emily. To her, they weren't just tools of the trade. They were family. And anyone who knew Emily understood that crossing her meant crossing them too. On this particular afternoon, Emily decided to take Titan and Luna on a routine patrol through the outskirts of town. It was a peaceful area, dotted with trees and winding roads that led to a popular biker bar. The bar was a hangout spot for rough-looking men clad in leather jackets adorned with patches symbolizing rebellion and freedom. Most of them were off-duty soldiers or locals who loved the thrill of living on the edge. While Emily didn't frequent such places, she passed by them often during her patrols. As she walked down the dusty road, her boots crunching against gravel, Titan and Luna trotted beside her, their leashes held firmly in her hands. They moved as one unit, a perfect trio bound by trust and training. Passers-by usually gave them a wide berth, knowing better than to disturb a K-9 team in action. But today would be different. A group of bikers loitering outside the bar noticed Emily approaching. At first, they simply watched her, curious about the sight of a lone woman walking with two large dogs. Then, one of them, a burly man with a scruffy beard and an oversized leather jacket, leaned forward and smirked. "Well, well," he said loudly enough for his friends to hear, "look what we've got here." A girl playing soldier with her puppies. His comment drew laughter from the others, and soon the entire group turned their attention to Emily. Another biker chimed in, his voice dripping with mockery. "Hey, sweetheart, those mutts aren't gonna protect you if things get rough." His words were followed by more jeers and snickers, each insult landing like a pebble aimed at a calm lake. Despite the growing tension, Emily remained unfazed. Years of service had taught her how to stay composed under pressure. She didn't flinch or react to their taunts. Instead, she kept walking, her eyes focused straight ahead. Titan and Luna, sensing her steady demeanor, stayed close, their ears perked up and alert. Though they looked relaxed, anyone familiar with military dogs could tell they were ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. The bikers, however, misinterpreted her silence as weakness. Emboldened by their numbers and the alcohol coursing through their veins, they grew bolder. One of them stepped closer, blocking Emily's path. "Come on, lady," he sneered, flexing his arms. "Let's see what your team can really do." His tone was laced with arrogance, challenging her to prove herself in front of his cheering friends. For a brief moment, time seemed to stand still. Emily stopped walking and turned to face the man, her expression unreadable. There was no fear in her gaze, only quiet determination. Behind her, Titan and Luna stood tall, their powerful frames radiating authority. The bikers may not have realized it yet, but they were about to learn a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. The bikers' laughter rang out again, louder this time, as if Emily's warning had only fueled their bravado. They weren't used to being challenged, especially not by someone they saw as an easy target. To them, she was just a woman with two dogs, and the idea that she could hold her own against their group seemed laughable. The leader, still smirking, took another step closer, his arms crossed over his chest, like a wall of defiance. "Yeah, okay," he said, rolling his eyes. "We're shaking in our boots. So what's it gonna be, huh? You gonna sick your little guard dogs on us?" Emily didn't respond immediately. Instead, she glanced down at Titan and Luna, who were standing perfectly still beside her. Their bodies were taut, every muscle ready to spring into action, yet they remained calm under her control. She gave them a subtle signal, a gentle squeeze of the leashes, and both dogs relaxed slightly, though their sharp eyes never left the bikers. It was as if they understood that patience was key, that this moment required restraint before action. Finally, Emily spoke again, her voice steady and clear. "All right," she said, her tone neutral but firm. "If you're so eager to see what my team can do, then fine. But don't say I didn't warn you." With that, she released Titan and Luna from their leashes, giving them a single hand gesture to stand ready. Instantly, the dogs moved into position, their powerful frames poised like coiled springs. They didn't bark or growl. They didn't need to. Their presence alone was enough to send a shiver down anyone's spine. The bikers exchanged glances, their earlier confidence wavering ever so slightly. One of them muttered something under his breath about how it's just a couple of dogs, but even he couldn't hide the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Still, none of them backed down. After all, pride was a dangerous thing, and admitting fear wasn't something these men were accustomed to doing. "Okay, tough girl," the leader said, trying to mask his unease with sarcasm. "Let's see what your circus act can do. What's the plan? Fetch, roll over, maybe a little dance for us." Emily ignored his taunts and turned her attention to her audience. "Here's how this is going to work," she explained, her voice carrying authority. "Titan and Luna are trained for speed, agility, and precision. They'll complete a series of tasks designed to test those skills, all while being timed. If you think you're so tough, you can try to keep up. Or better yet, you can sit back and watch." Her words silenced the crowd momentarily. A few of the bikers chuckled nervously, unsure whether she was bluffing or serious. But when Emily signaled for Titan to move, the mood shifted entirely. The dog exploded into action, sprinting toward a distant target with breathtaking speed. His sleek form cut through the air like a bullet, leaving trails of dust in his wake. Within seconds, he reached the object, a weighted dummy placed several hundred feet away, and grabbed it firmly in his jaws before racing back to Emily's side. The bikers stared in stunned silence, their jaws slack. None of them had expected such raw power and athleticism. When Titan returned, dropping the dummy at Emily's feet without missing a beat, the group erupted into murmurs of disbelief. "No way," one of them muttered, shaking his head. "That thing's fast." But Emily wasn't done yet. Next, she directed Luna to tackle an obstacle course set up nearby, a makeshift setup consisting of tall walls, narrow beams, and weaving poles. Without hesitation, Luna sprang into motion, leaping effortlessly over barriers and balancing across beams with pinpoint accuracy. Her movements were fluid and calculated, each step executed with flawless precision. By the time she completed the circuit and returned to Emily's side, the bikers were no longer laughing. Instead, they watched with wide eyes, their earlier mockery replaced by awe. It was clear now that Emily's dogs weren't ordinary pets. They were finely tuned machines, capable of feats most humans couldn't replicate. And as the realization sank in, the bikers began to feel the weight of their earlier arrogance. They had pushed too far, and now they were about to face the consequences. The air grew thick with tension as the biker, who had stepped forward, folded his arms across his chest, a smug grin plastered on his face. His friends gathered behind him, their laughter echoing down the quiet road like thunder in an otherwise calm sky. The man's eyes darted between Emily and her dogs, clearly sizing them up. But it was obvious he wasn't taking her seriously. To him, she was just a woman with two animals, not someone to be feared or respected. "Come on," he said again, his voice louder this time, dripping with mockery. "You're telling me these two fleabags are supposed to scare us? I've seen bigger threats in my sleep." His words were met with hoots of approval from the group, their confidence swelling as they egged each other on. One of them even mimicked a dog barking, sending the crowd into fits of raucous laughter. It was clear they thought this whole situation was some kind of joke. Emily didn't say a word. She simply stood there, her posture unwavering, her gaze steady. Years of training and experience had taught her that responding to insults only fueled people like this. Instead, she focused on keeping Titan and Luna calm. The dogs, though visibly alert, remained perfectly still at her side, their sharp eyes scanning the scene. They weren't growling or baring their teeth. They didn't need to. Their sheer presence was enough to make anyone think twice about crossing them. But the bikers weren't thinking twice. If anything, their bravado grew stronger with every passing second. Another man, emboldened by the cheers of his friends, decided to take things further. He grabbed an empty beer bottle from a nearby table and hurled it toward Titan and Luna. The glass container landed harmlessly several feet away, rolling to a stop near the edge of the road. It was a childish move, but one meant to provoke, to show dominance. Titan and Luna flinched slightly at the sudden noise, their muscles tensing beneath their sleek coats. For a split second, it looked like they might react, but Emily's firm grip on their leashes kept them grounded. She gave them a subtle command under her breath, and instantly the dogs relaxed, though their ears stayed pricked and their bodies remained coiled like springs. Anyone watching closely could see that they were ready to act if needed, but for now, they deferred to Emily's control. The bikers erupted into laughter once more, slapping each other on the back, as if they'd just won some invisible contest. "See," the leader shouted, pointing at Emily. "Told you those dogs are all bark and no bite. What's the matter, sweetheart? Scared to let him off their leashes?" His taunt hung in the air, heavy with arrogance. But Emily didn't rise to the bait. She knew better than to engage in a verbal sparring match with men who thrived on chaos and provocation. Instead, she took a deep breath, letting their jeers wash over her without leaving a mark. Her silence seemed to irritate the bikers even more. They wanted a reaction, something to validate their behavior, but Emily refused to give them the satisfaction. One of the men, shorter but stockier than the rest, leaned in closer, his tone shifting from mocking to outright confrontational. "Hey, lady," he spat, jabbing a finger in her direction. "If you're so tough, why don't you put your money where your mouth is? Let's see what your little pets can do against real men." His challenge was met with approving nods from the others, their eagerness palpable. For the first time since the encounter began, Emily finally spoke. Her voice was calm, but carried an unmistakable edge, cutting through the noise like a blade slicing through fabric. "You don't want to do this," she warned, her eyes locking onto the man's. There was no anger in her tone, only certainty, a quiet assurance that sent a ripple of unease through the group. The bikers hesitated for a moment, unsure how to interpret her words. Was she bluffing, or did she really mean it? Before they could decide, the leader broke the silence with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Whatever," he scoffed. "Let's see what you've got then. Show us what your mutts are made of." And just like that, the challenge was issued. Emily tightened her grip on the leashes, her mind already calculating the next steps. She didn't need to prove anything to these men. But sometimes, actions spoke louder than words, and judging by the way the bikers were posturing, they were about to learn exactly who and what they were dealing with. As Emily and her dogs continued their patrol, the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the road. The air grew cooler, carrying with it the faint scent of pine from the nearby forest. Though the earlier confrontation with the bikers had been intense, Emily felt a sense of calm settle over her. It wasn't just because she'd handled the situation with professionalism. It was because she knew she had turned a potentially hostile encounter into an opportunity for understanding. Back at the bar, the bikers were still buzzing about what had happened. Word spread quickly among the patrons, and soon even those who hadn't witnessed the demonstration firsthand were hearing about the fearless woman and her incredible dogs. One of the older men at the bar, a grizzled veteran with a patch-covered vest, nodded knowingly as he listened to the story. "Sounds like she taught you boys a thing or two," he said, his voice gravelly but approving. Good for her. The leader of the group, who had initially mocked Emily, leaned against the bar with a sheepish expression. Yeah, well, we kinda deserved it, he admitted, swirling the remaining dregs of his beer in its glass. We were acting like idiots, thinking we could push her around. Turns out she didn't need to push back. Her dogs did all the talking for her. His friends nodded in agreement, their earlier bravado replaced by genuine respect. I've never seen anything like it, one of them said, shaking his head in disbelief. Those dogs moved like lightning. And that handler, man, she's got nerves of steel. Didn't flinch once. Their conversation shifted from embarrassment to curiosity as they discussed the intricacies of K9 training and the bond between handler and dog. The wiry biker who had apologized to Emily earlier chimed in again, his tone animated. She told me it takes years to train dogs like that. Years. And it's not just about teaching them commands, it's about trust. Like those dogs would do anything for her because they know she'll take care of them. Another man, sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up unexpectedly. You ever hear about military working dogs? He asked, his voice low but steady. When the others shook their heads, he continued. They save lives out there. Detect explosives, track enemies, protect soldiers, you name it. What you saw today, that's just a fraction of what they're capable of. This revelation only deepened the bikers' admiration for Emily and her team. They realized now that she wasn't just a woman walking her dogs. She was part of something bigger, a tradition of service and sacrifice that many of them couldn't fully comprehend. For men who prided themselves on toughness, being humbled by someone so composed and skilled left a lasting impression. Meanwhile, Emily reached the edge of town, where the road opened up into a wide field bordered by tall trees. She stopped briefly, allowing Titan and Luna to drink from their portable water bowls. As they lapped up the cool liquid, she glanced back in the direction of the bar, her thoughts drifting to the bikers. It wasn't anger she felt toward them. It was empathy. She knew that people often acted out of ignorance or insecurity, and while their behavior had been disrespectful, it also presented an opportunity to educate. By the time she returned to the base later that evening, news of the incident had already reached some of her fellow handlers. A few of them teased her good-naturedly, calling her the legend of the day. Emily brushed off the compliments with a modest smile, focusing instead on debriefing Titan and Luna. She gave each dog a thorough checkup, ensuring they were hydrated and comfortable after their eventful outing. Their tails wagged happily as she praised them, their loyalty unwavering. That night, as Emily sat in her quarters writing up her report, she reflected on the day's events. While the encounter with the bikers had been unexpected, it reminded her why she loved her job. Every day brought new challenges, and every challenge was an opportunity to make a difference. Whether it was protecting others, showcasing the capabilities of her dogs, or simply proving that strength comes in many forms, Emily took pride in knowing she represented something greater than herself. And as for the bikers, by the next morning, stories of the K9 handler who shut down the gang were circulating throughout the town. Some versions exaggerated the details, claiming Titan and Luna performed death-defying stunts, but the core message remained the same. Don't underestimate someone based on appearances. Respect is earned, not given freely. And sometimes, when faced with quiet confidence and undeniable skill, even the loudest voices learn to fall silent. As Emily and her dogs resumed their patrol, the atmosphere around them had shifted completely. The once hostile bikers were now quiet, their earlier arrogance replaced by a palpable sense of humility. Some of them lingered near the bar, whispering among themselves, while others watched silently as Emily walked away, her stride steady and confident. It was clear that they weren't just impressed, they were humbled. One of the bikers, a wiry man with a scruffy beard and a leather vest covered in patches, broke away from the group and jogged a few steps to catch up with Emily. He stopped at a respectful distance, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "Hey," he called out, his voice hesitant but sincere. "Can I ask you something?" Emily paused, turning to face him with an expression that was neither warm nor cold, just neutral. She gave a slight nod, signaling for him to continue. Behind her, Titan and Luna stood alert, their eyes fixed on the man but without any signs of aggression. They trusted Emily's judgment, and for now, she seemed willing to hear him out. The biker took a deep breath, clearly gathering his thoughts before speaking. I wanted to say sorry. For all of us, I mean. We didn't know what we were messing with back there." He gestured vaguely toward Titan and Luna, then added, "And honestly, we didn't know what we were saying either. You handled yourself, and your dogs, with class. We were out of line." His apology hung in the air, raw and unpolished, but undeniably genuine. Emily studied him for a moment, her gaze steady. Then, after a brief pause, she nodded again. "Apology accepted," she said simply. Her tone wasn't dismissive or condescending. It carried a quiet authority that made it clear she valued accountability over revenge. "Just remember, words matter. Actions matter. Next time, think twice before picking a fight you don't understand." The man nodded vigorously, relief washing over his face. "Yeah, absolutely. Lesson learned." He hesitated for a second, then asked, "Do you mind if I ask one more thing? How do you stay so calm when people are being jerks to you like that?" Emily chuckled softly, the sound unexpected but disarming. "Years of practice," she admitted, her lips curving into a faint smile. "Being a handler isn't just about training dogs. It's about patience, discipline, and knowing when to act versus when to let things go. Not everyone understands what we do, and that's okay. My job is to focus on my mission, not to win arguments." Her answer seemed to resonate with the man, who nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense," he said. "I guess it's easier to run your mouth than to actually walk the walk, huh?" "Something like that," Emily replied with another small smile. She glanced down at Titan and Luna, who were still watching the exchange with quiet intensity. "These two remind me every day that actions speak louder than words. If you want respect, you have to earn it, not demand it." The biker looked down at the dogs, his expression softening. "Well, they definitely earned mine today," he said earnestly, "and so did you." With that, he stepped back, giving Emily space to continue her patrol. As she walked away, he turned to rejoin his friends, shaking his head in amazement. "Man, did you see that? Those dogs are insane, and she's tougher than all of us combined." Back at the bar, the rest of the group greeted him with curious looks. "What'd she say?" one of them asked, leaning forward eagerly. "She said we're idiots," the man replied with a self-deprecating laugh, "but also that it's never too late to learn something new." He glanced toward Emily, who was now a good distance away, her figure framed against the backdrop of trees and winding roads. "Let's just say I won't be messing with anyone with a dog ever again." The group erupted into nervous laughter, though there was no malice in it this time. Instead, there was a shared understanding, a realization that they had underestimated someone extraordinary and paid the price in pride. By the time Emily disappeared around the bend, the bikers were already recounting the story to anyone who would listen, their voices filled with admiration rather than mockery. For Emily, the encounter was nothing more than a blip in her day, a reminder of why she loved her job and the bond she shared with Titan and Luna. But for the bikers, it was a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. Never judge a book by its cover, and never underestimate the power of quiet confidence backed by skill, loyalty, and heart. The scene was electric, charged with a mix of awe and disbelief. The biker who had been pinned by Titan stood frozen for a moment, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. His friends were equally stunned, their earlier bravado replaced by an uncomfortable silence. For the first time since the encounter began, no one spoke. The only sounds were the distant hum of traffic and the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. Emily remained calm, her demeanor unchanged despite the dramatic turn of events. She knelt beside Titan, giving him a gentle pat on the head to reward his flawless performance. Luna sat nearby, her sharp eyes still scanning the group, ready to act if needed. To anyone watching, it was clear that these dogs weren't just animals. They were highly skilled partners capable of handling situations most humans couldn't even imagine. The defeated biker finally broke the silence, his voice shaky but sincere. "Okay," he admitted, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "You win." That was something else. He glanced at Titan, then back at Emily, his expression a mixture of respect and lingering unease. It was evident that he hadn't expected to be overpowered so quickly, and certainly not by a dog. His words seemed to break the spell over the group. One by one, the other bikers began to murmur among themselves, their earlier mocking tone replaced by genuine curiosity. A younger man near the back stepped forward hesitantly, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "So, how long does it take to train them?" he asked, his voice tinged with admiration. "I mean, they're fast, smart. What's the secret?" Emily straightened up, sensing an opportunity to educate rather than scold. She crossed her arms casually, her posture relaxed but authoritative. "It takes years," she explained, her tone measured but warm. "Titan and Luna have been training since they were puppies. They learn everything from basic obedience to advanced tasks like detecting explosives or tracking suspects. But it's not just about commands. It's about building trust. These dogs know I'll always protect them, and they'll always do the same for me." Her explanation seemed to resonate with the group. Several of the men nodded thoughtfully, their earlier hostility melting away. Another biker chimed in, his voice softer now. "So, they're not just attack dogs. Like, they can actually think for themselves." Emily smiled faintly, appreciating the question. "Exactly," she replied. "They're not mindless machines. They're intelligent, intuitive, and incredibly loyal. When we're out in the field, they make decisions based on their training and instincts. That's why they're so effective. They don't hesitate when it matters most." As she spoke, some of the bikers began to approach cautiously, their body language shifting from confrontational to curious. One of them crouched down a safe distance away from Titan and Luna, studying them intently. "Man, they're huge," he remarked, his voice filled with wonder. "But they look so calm. How do you get them to stay like that?" "It's all about consistency," Emily said, kneeling beside Luna this time. She ran a hand gently over the dog's sleek coat, demonstrating the bond between handler and animal. "Training is important, but so is care. These dogs are my partners, not tools. If you treat them with respect and kindness, they'll give you their all every single time." The transformation in the bikers' attitudes was remarkable. Gone were the jeers and insults. Instead, there was a growing sense of admiration, and perhaps even guilt, for the way they had treated Emily earlier. The leader of the group, who had started the whole ordeal, cleared his throat awkwardly. "Look," he began, scratching the back of his neck. "We didn't mean any disrespect. We were just messing around. You know how it is." Emily raised an eyebrow, but didn't press the issue. Instead, she gave a slight nod, accepting his apology without making a big deal out of it. "Apology accepted," she said simply. "Just remember, next time you see someone doing their job, maybe think twice before judging them. Not everything is what it seems." Her words struck a chord with the group. Several of the men exchanged glances, their expressions reflecting a newfound understanding. As Emily gathered Titan and Luna's leashes and prepared to continue her patrol, the bikers parted ways respectfully, allowing her to pass without further comment. For Emily, it wasn't about proving a point or seeking revenge. It was about showing these men the truth, not just about her dogs, but about herself. And as she walked away, flanked by her loyal companions, she knew she had earned something far more valuable than applause: respect. The mood had shifted dramatically. What started as a taunting spectacle was now a tense standoff, with the bikers watching Emily and her dogs with a mix of disbelief and unease. The laughter that once filled the air had faded into an awkward silence, broken only by the occasional murmur among the group. They were no longer mocking. They were observing, their confidence cracking under the weight of what they had just witnessed. Emily stood tall, her expression calm but commanding. She wasn't gloating or rubbing their faces in it. Instead, she carried herself with quiet authority, letting the dog's performance speak for itself. Titan and Luna sat obediently at her side, their bodies relaxed but alert, ready to respond to her next command. To anyone watching, it was clear that this was not just a handler and her animals. It was a partnership built on trust, discipline, and years of rigorous training. But Emily knew the demonstration wasn't over yet. While speed and agility were impressive, they weren't the full picture. These bikers needed to see something more tangible, something that would drive home the true capabilities of her team. And so, without hesitation, she decided to take things one step further. "All right," she said, addressing the leader directly, her voice steady and unwavering. "You wanted to see what my dogs are made of. Let's make this personal." She gestured toward the group. "One of you steps up, and we'll show you how Titan and Luna handle real-life scenarios. Think you're tough enough?" The bikers exchanged uneasy glances, their bravado faltering. None of them seemed eager to volunteer, but peer pressure quickly took over. After a few moments of shuffling and muttered arguments, one of the men reluctantly stepped forward. He was broad-shouldered and muscular, with tattoos snaking up his arms and a scowl etched onto his face. Clearly, he didn't want to back down in front of his friends. "Fine," he grumbled, crossing his arms defensively. "What do I gotta do?" Emily nodded toward a nearby area where padded protective gear lay waiting. "Put this on," she instructed, pointing to the armor. "It's designed to simulate resistance during apprehension drills. Don't worry, it's safe, but it'll give you an idea of how Titan operates when dealing with threats." The man hesitated for a moment, then walked over and began strapping on the gear. His movements were slow and deliberate, as if he were trying to buy time or rethink his decision. But there was no turning back now. Once he was fully suited up, he turned to face Emily, his posture stiff and unsteady. Despite his size and outward confidence, there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Emily knelt beside Titan, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "Listen carefully," she told the biker. "Titan is trained to neutralize threats using controlled force. He won't hurt you permanently, but he will immobilize you. Are you ready?" The man swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing noticeably. For the first time since the encounter began, he looked genuinely nervous. Still, pride outweighed fear, and he gave a curt nod. "Yeah," he muttered. "Let's get this over with." With a single hand signal, Emily released Titan. In an instant, the dog sprang into action, his powerful legs propelling him forward like a coiled spring. Before the biker could even react, Titan closed the distance between them, locking onto the padded sleeve wrapped around the man's arm. With precise force, he clamped down, applying just enough pressure to pin the biker in place without causing injury. The man stumbled backward, caught off guard by the sheer power behind Titan's grip. Despite the padding, he couldn't break free, no matter how much he struggled. Within seconds, he raised his other hand in surrender, tapping loudly against the armor to signal defeat. Titan immediately released his hold and returned to Emily's side, his demeanor calm and composed, as if nothing had happened. The rest of the bikers stared in stunned silence, their earlier arrogance completely gone. Some of them shifted uncomfortably, while others exchanged nervous glances. It was clear they hadn't expected this outcome, and they certainly hadn't anticipated feeling intimidated by a pair of highly trained dogs. As the defeated biker removed the protective gear, his face flushed with embarrassment, Emily spoke again. Her tone was measured but firm. "This isn't about showing off or proving a point. My job is to protect people, and Titan and Luna are part of that mission. They're not weapons. They're tools of precision and control. Respect them, and you'll have nothing to worry about. Underestimate them, and you'll regret it. Her word tongue in the air, punctuated by the undeniable reality of what everyone had just witnessed. The bikers may have come looking for entertainment, but they left with a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. The days that followed the encounter between Emily, Titan, Luna, and the bikers brought an unexpected shift in the small town's atmosphere. What had started as a tense standoff quickly transformed into something of a local legend. People who frequented the biker bar began recounting the story with a mix of admiration and disbelief. Some added dramatic embellishments, claiming Titan leaped over cars or that Luna could outrun motorcycles. But the heart of the tale remained unchanged. A calm, composed woman and her fiercely loyal dogs had proven themselves to be far more formidable than anyone expected. For the bikers, life didn't return to normal immediately. The leader of the group, once so quick to mock and provoke, found himself reflecting on his actions. He realized how hollow their bravado had been, how much they had relied on intimidation rather than respect. It was a humbling lesson, one he wasn't eager to repeat. When word spread about what had happened, other townsfolk looked at the bikers differently, not with fear, but with mild amusement. "Oh, you're the ones who got schooled by the K9 handler, huh?" became a common quip whenever the group passed through town. Emily, however, carried on as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. To her, it was just another day in the line of duty, a test of patience, skill, and professionalism. She continued her patrols, her routine unchanged, though she did notice subtle differences in how people interacted with her. Shopkeepers greeted her warmly when she stopped by during breaks, often asking about Titan and Luna. Parents pointed her out to their children, saying things like, "See those dogs? They help keep us safe because of how hard they train every day." Even strangers offered nods of acknowledgement, their expressions filled with respect. As for the bikers, they made a point to approach Emily whenever their paths crossed again. At first, it was awkward. They weren't sure how to act around someone they had once mocked so openly. But Emily didn't hold grudges. If anything, she appreciated their willingness to acknowledge their mistakes. Over time, these brief encounters turned into genuine conversations. The men learned more about her work, the rigorous training Titan and Luna underwent, and the critical role military dogs played in keeping communities safe. They even started referring to her as Sergeant Carter, dropping the condescending nicknames they had used before. One evening, several weeks after the incident, Emily decided to take Titan and Luna to a nearby park for some off-duty exercise. As she walked along the trail, tossing a ball for the dogs to chase, she noticed a familiar figure approaching. It was the wiry biker who had apologized to her after the demonstration. This time, he came alone, his hands stuffed into his jacket pockets and his expression nervous but sincere. "Hey, Sergeant Carter," he said, stopping a few feet away. "Mind if I join you for a bit?" Emily glanced at him, then nodded. "Sure," she replied, tossing the ball again for Luna to retrieve. The man fell into step beside her, watching the dogs dart back and forth with obvious fascination. "You know," he began after a moment, "we've been talking a lot about what happened that day. About you and your dogs. And, well, we were wrong. Plain and simple. You didn't have to show us anything, but you did. And honestly, I think we needed it." Emily listened quietly, letting him speak without interruption. She appreciated his honesty, even if it came late. "It's not about being right or wrong," she said finally. "It's about understanding each other. You guys learned something, and maybe I helped with that. That's all that matters." The man nodded, looking relieved. "Still, I wanted to say thanks. For not holding a grudge, I mean. Most people would have written us off after something like that." Emily smiled faintly, her gaze softening. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she said simply. "Besides, I've dealt with worse." They walked together for a while longer, the conversation shifting to lighter topics. By the time they parted ways, There was a mutual understanding between them, an unspoken agreement that the past was behind them. In the weeks and months that followed, the bikers became occasional visitors to the base's open house events, where they marveled at demonstrations featuring K9 units like Emily's. They'd brought friends and family, sharing stories of the day they met Titan and Luna. Their presence was no longer intimidating. Instead, it felt like a bridge had been built, one forged from respect and newfound appreciation. And as for Emily, she returned to her quiet, dedicated life, content in the knowledge that she had made a difference, not just by showcasing her skills, but by inspiring change in those who once doubted her. For Titan and Luna, it was business as usual, protecting, serving, and standing proudly by her side. Together, they proved that true strength lies